Multiple output should be starting. Okay, and then I gotta check 3 million chats that they're all on. Okay. I'm also gonna download this video and make my parents watch it. Okay. Which chat am I not looking at? Okay, there's that one. Okay, all right, we started.
Your thing to make sure sound is working on stream.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I just realized you like light mode. That's nutty.
Okay, yeah, the audio is working properly on stream, on Twitch at least.
I think isn't light mode default? Is it?
I think you can change it if you want to on the settings. I keep all of my stuff darkened.
I mean, Bray, it is kind of fitting though.
Ha! Okay, all right, I'm gonna start the video and I think...
Yeah, reminding myself, we're gonna attempt not to interrupt as much as possible so that we,
Yes.
It was 1923 that German Mustache Man was
Can everyone
indicted
hear
on
that?
charges of insurrection against...
Is that playing? You can? Okay.
Oh, Jane,
sure
just not to interrupt, but if ever in the future, you know Volume Master, there's an extension for your browser, and it artificially increases the volume for any video beyond the maximum if you ever need it.
Oh, that's awesome. Volume Master? Okay.
Yeah.
I should get that. Okay, let me make sure I'm actually... Oh, I need to watch this too because I'm on a different thing. Okay. No wonder I can't hear it. Okay. All right, I'm going to continue.
Against the German government. He was tried, found guilty, then given a little slap on the wrist, and he became a convicted felon. Despite being treated more than fairly by the judge and judicial system, Angry Mustache Man claimed that the trial was nothing more than political persecution, a witch hunt, and successfully portrayed himself as the victim of this corrupt social democratic government. Captain Mustache Man was able to manipulate the public and positioned himself as the voice of the common people. Held frequent campaign rallies where he spoke against the elitists and cultural degeneracy and branded the establishment as Marxists who would take from the good, hard-working German people and give it to the lazy, the foreigner, the undeserving, and only he could stop them and save the German people. He gave fiery speeches, claiming the educational system was indoctrinating the children to hate Germany, hate their traditional values, and promised to return Germany to greatness. To rally his base, Captain Mustache Man successfully targeted and blamed minorities for the nation's problems, exploiting already existing social divisions with a us versus them narrative. Many Germans swallowed this bait. Mustache Man and his Yahtzee party grew in public popularity, and he became chancellor in 1933. Once in power, he appointed German oligarchs to be his economic advisors. He proceeded to privatize government-run utilities, which caused his favorability to rapidly rise amongst the nation's economic elite as their profits soared. With the working class distracted, fighting over largely meaningless ethnicity, the Yahtzees shut down labor unions and abolished strikes. Progressives and trade unionists were imprisoned and sent to concentration camps. Corporate profits skyrocketed to never-seen-before heights, while the German working class was living paycheck to paycheck. Captain Mustache Man quickly amassed great wealth and became a billionaire when adjusted to today's dollars. Rumors of dirty deals, kickbacks, and income tax evasions swirled around him at all times. But he kept these rumors at bay with the continued narrative of a political persecution. Nothing he was accused of was ever his fault, ever his doing. It was all just evidence of a corrupt system trying to stop him from making Germany great again. Multiple failed assassination attempts were also used as evidence to prove he was the chosen one to save Germany from the evil and corruption they were languishing under. He and his gang of oligarchs could get away with this scam so long as they continually had the enemy from within to blame. A deep state, if you will, Meanwhile, they themselves turned Germany into a government of a corporatocracy, a government run by corporations, and robbed the country blind. Mustache Man targeted a minority community to focus the public's anger and keep them distracted. Revoking media under Yahtzee rule highlighted instances of violence by Jews to convince the public the Jewish immigrants were a danger to the real Germans. Captain Mustache Man worked swiftly to dismantle any democratic institutions that could supplant him and replace any people or mechanisms within the government that could be used against him with sworn loyalists. Loyalty was not just encouraged, it was demanded. Opposition was silenced by any means necessary. Media that dared question him was demonized as the enemy, as Marxists, a part of the deep state that needed to be eliminated. Any voice against him was used as fuel to feed his loyal followers. The Yahtzee propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, bragged about how Mustache Man was able to intimidate the media into giving him favorable coverage to where he didn't even need to give them any direct orders. They simply fell in line. Yahtzee regime and its followers collected books that they saw promoting degeneracy, or what would be considered today woke ideology, and burned them in large bonfires. They burned books that would promote class consciousness or ideas of equality. Berlin had a large LGBTQ community in the 1920s, and even had the first transgender clinic. Yahtzees lit fire to it and burned it to the ground. LGBTQ people were sent to concentration camps and forced to wear triangle badges. Many of them were unalived in the Holocaust. The Yahtzee Party proclaimed that masculinity was under attack and manhood itself was being destroyed by the rise of feminism. In 1934, Hitler proclaimed a woman's world is her husband, her family, her children, and her house. Progressive laws that had provided women with equal rights were repealed, and new laws were introduced to restrict women to the home, to a role as wife and mother. They claimed to be bringing an end to this era of dangerous feminism that was destroying the heart of the German family. Abortion had been legal under German law. However, the Yahtzee Party worked swiftly to replace those laws, and doctors who performed abortions were faced with the death penalty. In spite of Mustache Man having declared himself Führer, meaning leader, or what we would call dictator, most Germans continued to go along unbothered, as did most of the world. Perhaps if they had had a history of an evil right-wing authoritarian dictator to look back upon and judge current events by, they would have recognized the signs and made better decisions. Unfortunately, most did not see what was coming or simply chose to ignore it. Or perhaps they were just hoping for the best. Whether by ignorance or complicity, the failing of the German people resulted in the unaliving of nearly 100 million people around the world. May we never allow this to happen again.
All right, that's that. Let's stop it for reboots.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's a very well made and put video that just makes the direct similarities so exceedingly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And it cuts through the part of my brain that tries to say, like, this isn't an emergency, and just was like, no, this is an emergency right now. This is the genocide, a new extra genocide is about to start happening. Or is in the process of getting going. They've already started what's right, because they don't, and that's another thing that I think American media and Western media in general sort of like others, or like puts the idea of genocide into like somewhere else territory is by
Yes.
only talking about it as the active killing of people and not the ways that they get started by forcing people into specific places.
Yes.
Right? The moment the government starts putting people into concentrated areas, encampments, right? And like if you say the word concentration camps, people again they get that image of like the active killing portion from the middle and end. But like
Yeah.
it starts out with like the term concentration camps just means any place where you're concentrating a certain group of people in an encampment rather than their homes. And so like the thing that Trump wants to do or is doing, I don't know, putting those people on which island is it? Alcatraz? No, the other one.
Guantanamo?
Guantanamo Bay.
Guantanamo Bay, right? Like if the moment those people are there, that is a concentration camp. You
Yes.
don't have to wait until they're being actively murdered to say that
Well,
is a concentration camp.
Yes.
Do you also know
Well,
why it's that place? Because it's outside the bounds of the United States,
Right,
so it's
right.
extrajudicial.
Right, it's the place where they torture people. It is the special place that American presidents keep to do illegal war crimes and torture people.
And with what RFK fever dream is, he wants to put people in rural areas, which is not where most people want to live, and force us out of occupations, jobs, education. Cities are where you have the arts and sciences, not rural areas. Rural areas is for farming, so he wants to force us into farming conditions while they are also trying to take everyone who is here doing the farming, because their citizenship process was interrupted. So he's trying to make the disabled people replace the people that they're either sending out of the country or putting somewhere else as criminals when they just navigate in.
Right, because they are fascists. They are going to genocide a group of outsiders that they can blame everything that's wrong about reality on as a scapegoat. And because that group of people, contrary to what they say, is part of the functioning backbone or foundation of the economy of the country that they're being scapegoated within, they need to be replaced by other undesirables that they can get away with forcing into labor, the way that they already use things like the war on drugs to force undesirables, aka Black youths that become Black adults, into forced labor.
Did you know that tech companies have their own pharmacy on site? And that when everyone was experiencing the Vyvanse and Adderall shortages, they did not?
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? Yes, I learned that. So, yeah.
That doesn't sound surprising.
I was just thinking about the movie Sorry to Bother You and the unfortunate similarities to what's going to happen.
Do you know who they're trying not to hire at these companies now? Because of DEI and A, which is also an accessibility thing, but they're going to hide the fact that the white people still have ADHD. In these tech companies, but they don't want any Black people there. And then they want to make farms where they're going to make people who have neurodevelopmental differences or whatever else they decide do farming forced. That's weird, isn't it?
Just forced labor in general.
Yeah. Anywho, there's also a bill in, I forget which state, that they're trying to say they want to immediately take the Department of Health and all of the records and transfer them to the Department of Corrections.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't say what they really want to do, can they?
Right. No, they can't, right? And that's why they bring in Elon Musk and they say that they're looking for government efficiency. And they give to this unelected oligarch control over all the systems and information that they can, with a bunch of yes men, young men, who are there to help them be as fast as possible to break the government and then rearrange it how they want, right? And what they tried to do first was put him in charge of the government employees and stuff being paid so that he could turn off the flow of money so that the entire government would grind to a halt and then they'd be able to only turn back on the things that they want. Unfortunately, that didn't happen immediately. But
it's
they
really
are doing
hard
it,
not to
right?
see
Like
this as what it is at this point.
we are in an active coup. Or maybe there's another word for when like someone's elected president and then does a coup. But yeah, it's a
That's
coup.
still a
Basically.
coup. That's still a coup.
Yeah,
Like, because he's
So
no
like
longer functioning as a president. He's
we are
functioning as a
living through an active, ignored coup of America by the elected, by at least some amount of people, by at least a lot of people, president, right?
Yeah.
No matter what, if anything happened behind the scenes, or if he was just straight up elected, he's doing a coup now that he was, and he told us that he would. He said, "If you vote for me this time, well, you won't have to vote for me again." And then he laughed, and because he laughed, or because he was silly, or because his skin was a little orange, people ignored him. And actually, that is why he functions so well as a puppet for the invested interests behind him, is because nobody could believe that he could do these things or plan these things because he's obviously mentally ill. So actually, the whole situation with Trump is like elder abuse and the abuse of a mentally ill, unwell person who is himself a horrible, disgusting being, but he still is being abused in this situation.
He's being used by bureaucratized cults, and we have 3 cults that we know about. One is basically white supremacist, organized through the triple, you know who. Okay, I don't know what I can and can't say on TikTok, but anyway, so those guys. One of them is techno-feudalist under the insane ideology of Curtis Yarvin that basically wants to turn people into nutrient paste that he finds unuseful to society. Yeah, and he thinks we should be run by CEOs, and he's an absolute loathsome human being. And then the third one is the evangelical lunatics who are trying to bring about end days. So you have all 3 of them.
Right. Right. They're 3 different, unique apocalypse cults.
Yeah, and they work together. So like Vance is an example of Yarvin with a coding of the Christo-fascists. He's an example of that. And obviously he's a white supremacist who is trying to court other white supremacists. As he has like, it's like, oh, but his wife. I'm like, yeah, okay. So that's not how this works actually. Like you can always create an in-class and out-group flexibly because it's all nonsense. So they don't have to be intellectually coherent. That's not how it works. It's all artificial. So he artificially drew whatever lines he needed to do in his life, but he's still courting all of those people who are like blatantly. He didn't. Yeah, I'm just. He just is. It is what he is. Okay.
And they know how to disassemble, and they know how to be flexible with their presentation of themselves and who they really are, which is, a stark contrast to what we've seen with the like so-called left people, or the, people who want good things, basically. Like these people not only are able to work with the oligarchs, which are the people with their current hands on the levers of power, but now they've elected somebody whose hands are on the levers of law, and they also can talk to a lot of different people in the working class who are facing the repercussions of the economic disaster that, the looting of the planet by the oligarchs. They're able to speak in a way that appeals to their biases and stuff to trick them into voting alongside their stooge.
The promise of easy answers.
And they're capable of working together because each of them is super happy to fight a literal war after they get rid of the rest of us to see which of their cults gets to be the one that comes out ahead.
Exactly.
Right? And because left-leaning people, aka people who want to do good things, are not willing to team up with someone who, if they helped us fix the world, we would then have to have a war against. Because wars are bad. Right. And so that's why people talk about why can't the left get together, whatever. Well, it's because we're not sociopaths and manipulative lunatics who are proponents.
Well,
and that's
the real main objective of war is really profit and its enrichment. That's the main driving force behind why they want to have eternal war, though.
No, yeah,
that's the goal of cults too.
That's also just the goal of violence. Is to take physical objects, aka so-called wealth, from people, right? You do violence against a person because you want to take their body or the place they live or the things they have or the work that they've done. And you want to profit, aka get things by violence that you didn't work for yourself and didn't belong to you until you did violence.
Right, so it's tied to envy as well.
Yes, and it's envy of prosociality. Like I do think that people that are antisocial know there's something deeply wrong with them, and I think that they start to resent people who exclude them because they cannot be in a prosocial space because they ruin it.
Right.
So I think that also creates a weird. It's part of their revenge drive and stuff, and their vindictiveness.
It's actually, if you look at Curtis Yarvin, Feel, any of these guys, right? If you look at their early histories, they had a history of being, I guess, bullied in school and then having a real chip on their shoulder when they didn't make it in the places that they wanted to be in. And like they're examples of the worst ways that you can go after such a situation.
So that's what, okay, I'm going to suggest something. I hear that about Elon and all them. I do not think they're being honest about their history of bullying. I think they were creeping people out. I think they got bullied because they were actually initiating social things with people.
Because they're psychopaths or whatever specific issue is wrong with them, they can't distinguish bullying between being treated fairly and with normal boundaries.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. The fact that people cannot be around them being abusive, they think that is being bullied, and they cannot tell the difference. And so they don't even need to intentionally lie about it, because unless you do, like Elon Musk, like a narcissist, unless you do what he wants at all times, you are bullying him and you are doing things to him.
Right, you're violating his rights.
It's Darvo.
You're violating his right. Darvo. Yeah. You violate his rights.
I don't think Elon has autism. Just to be, I'm going to put that 100.
Absolutely.
I think that's bullshit. He doesn't act like autism.
When I mentioned bullying, I was, say, for example, specifically thinking like when Feel in his autobiography, apparently like the reason why he called his company's Palantir and Lord of the Rings names was that he was like super into the movies as a kid. And his biographer apparently says that he used to, get insulted in school for being a nerd or whatever. That's what I meant. But I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
Right, because, well, I guess he's quite old, so maybe he didn't have other nerd peers to be friends with or whatever. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and, Elon Musk likes to call things Tesla because he wants to steal Tesla's things. And
his reputation.
Yeah, he wants to steal their reputation. Right, and he just lies. Like 6 or 8 years ago or something, I first heard about Elon Musk, and he was saying a lot of things about, like, I want to save the planet.
Can I say something to
energy? Yeah.
Jamie. So he says that
Oh.
Elon Musk said on this SNL that he has Asperger's syndrome. Where's the fucking diagnostic paperwork? And I'll give you two things about that. Number one, people who lie to manipulate socially lie to manipulate socially. Number two,
Yeah.
is it more flattering to have your son who's acting really weird and teachers are noticing it diagnosed with Asperger's where he's a little professor genius? Or is it more flattering to say that he has a conduct disorder that is like antisocial? Which
Right.
one do you think the rich little boy in white South Africa is going to get?
Right.
Even if he has the diagnosis.
And yeah. You're not being attacked, Jamie. Sorry if you feel that way, but I'm just letting you know. No one's intention
He
is
said
to
he
attack
has
you.
it. So you have
We
to
were just
investigate this more. That's what I'm saying. So like, I'm not attacking
Right.
you. I'm saying that like, don't just believe that. There's no evidence that has ever been
Right.
supplied that he was actually diagnosed by a single human being. And even insofar as he had, you have to put it in context. He was a white boy in apartheid South Africa. What diagnosis do you think he's going to get? The flattering
Right.
one or the one that says that this person is probably going to be a predator?
Right. And also you could look at when does he ever mention it himself? Oh, either to aggrandize himself as one of the little autistic geniuses or as a get out of doing bigotry free card because he Heiled Hitler publicly.
It's the latter. It's the latter, yeah.
Right. No, he
Because
does
he could
both.
also just
Because
he could also pay.
he's not smart enough to pretend to be smart very well. And so he pretends to be a smart autistic person because people don't know what that looks like. So it's another cover for him to hide behind.
Yes.
It's also what his fans online think autism is. Like a lot of guys online kind of have this idea of acting autistic, right?
Yeah. It's the sort of acting autistic as the insult. It's also the like super rational bro logic mind. Autism is just being super male energy sort of idea as well. Like it's all kinds of things.
He's not being used. He's used. Look at his history of like the women and the children, Grimes, and the son that he now is using on public television that she said she doesn't want this person being in media.
Yeah,
child being
Elon
in media.
Musk has a rich history of being an abusive, narcissistic monster person.
Yes.
Like he's not being used in
he
this
sees
moment.
and manipulates. He sees and manipulates social information.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Trump and Elon Musk are both making use of each other in a like, tiger and bear coalition where they're like, let's kill everyone else and then we could fight later.
They have similar disorders.
If you really want just damning evidence that he's a bad person, on top of everything else, he recently met up with the leaders of AfD, the German far-right party that has proven direct ties to neo-Nazi groups in Germany that have been found to have killed people over the years, for kind of similar reasons that the Nazis did back then. So he's big friends with those guys. That tells you everything,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be very curious, like the person that professionally assessed me that has like years of experience with this, what was called the clinical range of Asperger's. That's the person that I saw, the person that especially focused on that, and adults who needed a late diagnosis in particular. That was his clinical specialty. I very much doubt he would diagnose this guy with it.
Yeah, so like Elon Musk is using autistics as a scapegoat. Even if he did have autism, he's still using us as a scapegoat because being autistic does not cause anybody to, Heil Hitler. That's not a thing. So even if he is in fact autistic, he's still using autism and us as a scapegoat.
He's such an extreme pathology that I think it would overpower if he even did have it, which I don't think is true.
Also, again, I don't think he could be functional if he had all the other issues going on with him and was also autistic. It doesn't make any sense for a person that is autistic to be in the position that he is and be the person that he is. That just wouldn't happen. It doesn't make sense.
Unless maybe, I don't know, it's like the environment that he was in and raised in perhaps really twisted him.
Well, okay.
No.
Also, But my theory of autism says that's not
Yeah.
possible because he still
Okay.
should be
He's
blind to social
manipulating
harm.
people.
How is he
He's
doing all this
understanding
manipulation?
social. Yeah, exactly. How is he doing all this manipulation on the fly successfully in the same way that Trump did? So it's just functioning just as well without
Yeah.
Trump
Mhm.
telling him, without like, and he's completely out of touch with his entire family, Elon, right? Because he's a narcissist. Because like he
But
can't be an
was
autistic person because he
that
doesn't have
behavior not
supports around him.
from his own parents or certain examples, right? The manipulation, I mean, like you do have to have that modeled, don't you, to pick it up?
So yeah, I mean, there's the idea that like autistic people could copy a narcissistic person in the way that like we need to understand social contagion better. So we'd be first I'd say we'd be speculating. I appreciate that like Bandy Lee is somebody that talks about like psychosocial contagions, and that like if you have somebody who has like a severe pathology, like something even that's like delusional, the family members will appear to also have the same pathology, and then the only way to resolve that is to get the person with the actual disorder away from the family members, and then they return to baseline. So I can understand that argument, but also like this is such an odd case where I don't know what we're looking at, and he was same thing with Trump, effectively institutionalized by having all of this resources and money and status from the fathers, both of their fathers. So maybe, but I also think they've basically developmentally become a separate thing at this point, even if that was
also with all the privilege that Elon Musk has, and yet I have never seen him do any sort of autistic movement or body holding or anything. Like he of any autistic on the world, he'd be the one least forced into masking, and yet I see no physical evidence of any stimming or anything autistic at all about him. He's just a slightly awkward guy who thinks that autism is being slightly awkward, and so he uses it to explain away his awkwardness in a way that makes him seem smart and cool.
Right.
And then in a palatable manner.
Yeah, and maybe he has a separate
and it's not even
diagnosis
awkwardness;
entirely.
it's like being a narcissist.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. We probably haven't mapped out the parameters. So when somebody says like, "Oh, males are so much more likely to have autism," like, are males more likely to have something, and some of it's autism, and something else that you don't even want to name because it's too pathologically like antisocial. So there may like, and I say this with all due respect, but like,
they're
what's
putting
that?
all aberrations in social behavior into the one bucket, right?
Yeah. Right. So we have there's a gender component to this. So right. So I think the most important thing to say is that like I think we should all be really skeptical that these labels make any sense at this point. When applied to somebody like Elon, when we try to apply it to people who are in the center of like what this means, like I'm a pretty standard autistic person, I would say, with like my own quirks, but the whole like you've met one autistic kind of fails because it doesn't say what the condition is, and then it can be anything. And that's not what it is. Like, I think we need to use the grid cell model of autism so we can get away from this and not be exploited by people who are antisocial, who need us as a scapegoat or a cover. We're socially impaired. We're not antisocial. I'll say it till I turn blue. Like, we still want to, we understand affective empathy in like that. So affect being, we notice if somebody's like agitated or calm. We notice if somebody's alert or tired. We notice if somebody's, like they're lethargic. We notice that in our pets, right? Like autistic people actually will take their pets to the vet sooner than a non-autistic person because we're paying more attention to it even. And then we also notice if people appear to be in pain or relief. We notice signs of that. So we can understand that. We may not understand why they're feeling it and how it situates in this like broader social matrix and this matrix of like the proto skills that go even before they become social skills. Like this is a fundamental difference that we have in understanding visual spatial relationship. So if we understand us that way, then there's no reason for us to be antisocial. And I think honestly, if somebody was autistic and that was broken, I don't even know what that would look like. I don't even know if that's functional. That might be just like I don't know how that breaks. because I think it seems to me that antisociality is a breaking down, is a manifestation of having social skills and then not caring about social information and features, when it seems that autism makes you care about features. Like it seems counterindicated to me if my
You know
model
what?
is correct.
What this reminds me
Oh,
of, it's like when during I think the Nazi regime, right, as it was starting out, there were popular child rearing manuals at the time that said things like, the mother should have as little contact with the baby after birth as possible, right? Like they'd put the baby in a separate room for 24 hours. And then I wonder, maybe that's sort of what causes things like that, when the child isn't given any form of mirroring or like to learn even sort of how to feel empathy in
mhm.
others and within oneself. And maybe that's what leads to antisociality, perhaps.
Hmm. Wait, say that last part again, because I had to type and then I missed the very last part.
Right. Trying to remember. Right. So I was saying how like these sort of like child rearing manuals in the beginning of like the Nazi regime were becoming popular, where they would tell the mothers to put their babies in separate
Yes.
rooms, right? It was some lady called Joanna. She was a famous Nazi who was apparently like big into that stuff, wrote some books, and she would say things like, "Yeah, don't do anything but the bare minimum to keep the biological functions of the baby fulfilled. But other than that, like no empathy, no mirroring, nothing
Right.
like that." Right?
Right.
Maybe that's what causes that antisociality.
Maybe. Right. Exactly. Yes. It may break the mirror neurons neurodevelopmentally, and then those synapses aren't properly formed. That's absolutely possible. And that like, because the entorhinal cortex is otherwise normal, then maybe they see like social context as irrelevant to their goal. Like their goal is to manipulate social context, and they don't care about or understand that social context is also communicating like the well-being of others. I think that autistic people absolutely can see. I do not think that having your grid cells broken breaks the ability to see the well-being of other people. I don't think that is true. And insofar as like, now this gets into the weeds of like what I understand and can comprehend about like this emerging research that shows that this may be a grid cell dysfunction. Then I don't know. Then I don't know, like these contrived behaviors towards developing brains get very alarming. And we need, I mean, the takeaway there is we need to not listen to ideologues who tell you what to do with children.
Right. I also just don't think that autistic people are able to be effective scammers because of our grid cell impairment. And so, like, just the things that Elon Musk does and the ways that he's made wealth by taking the things and ideas and credit for other people's things and
Mhm.
lying to investors to pretend to be doing a thing and actually just be pocketing the money and having no ability to actually follow through on things and all of this. Like, none of that fits into the understanding of autism that I have.
Right. And autistic people don't like being misunderstood because
Well, actually, autistic people have a higher sense of justice than non-autistic people.
Mhm, mhm.
Right?
Right.
That,
And
that Elon
yeah,
Musk clearly has no sense of justice.
right. He has
Yeah.
a sense of entitlement.
Mhm.
And that's not what you see autistic people doing. And even when autistic people try to set a rule, it's for the benefit of getting along with other people, and not to simply just have other people
Oh,
not bully us. Does that make sense? Like my goal isn't to like,
also,
I just don't want people to
we
bully
are
people. I actually want to get along with
we are
people.
consistent with our own rules. If we get to make our own rules, we keep them, and we tend to not move our positions around much. Or like all these, like any of the things that describe autistic people, none of them apply to Elon Musk.
Right. And it's also very useful for them to have this figure while RFK is saying these absolutely insane things, where I mean Elon
Well,
Musk isn't going
exactly.
to end up in a farm where he has to do labor. But I thought he's
Right, and then
supposed
they'll
to be
say
on isn't he on
these can't be
ketamine?
labor camps, these can't be concentration camps because Elon Musk, he's autistic, and if they were putting autistic people into labor camps, Elon
Right.
Musk would speak out about it.
Right.
They'd also spin it by saying that, oh, it do them good, you know, that they need to be in work, they need to like they'll
And
make
they'll
all
have
sorts of
Elon Musk
justifications.
visit
Yeah.
the camp. They'll have
Right.
Elon
They'll
Musk
say
visit
these.
the camp
They'll say
and
these
wave to
aren't
everyone.
people. These aren't full people. They are like children, or they are like animals, as they have done to Black people and women and just any minority that they want to take control of and exploit their labor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And they can also fabricate the image that then they'll show to the media, obviously, versus what's actually happening on the inside, like it happened in the concentration camps back then.
But also, welcome in Astral Storm. I'm glad you can make one. It's probably trying to be unobtrusive to masking. Yeah, well, and like, yeah, okay. So here's I want to give all of us like my model so that we can let go of some baggage at least. So we can never fix what happened to us in the past, and we can't really fix it going forward because neurotypical people use social information the same way that a person would be in a group class painting a sunset and you're physically in the sunset, but we are like the equivalent of being a congenitally blind person in that class. We don't get it. But what we can do is talk to people who speak literally with us and don't have the expectation for us to follow along and be able to know what to do when and why, and like, you know, so we perceive things about reality. So like the person sitting on the beach would feel the sun on their back and it drift away and they get colder, right? Like they would also have like a conceptual grasp of paint if they've studied it, or like even like may have worked on motor skills that, but we're just in a different phased out reality. So then we need to abandon that strategy now. But what we can do is tell people like, hey, I'm going to be socially weird and it may come in surprising ways. We haven't got it mapped out all the ways that you might be surprised by me, but I can't anticipate all the ways you'll be surprised by me because I don't see that information that you find surprising. So that's, see what I'm saying? So like, so we need to, and that also means that there's a lot of people we can't talk to. That's okay. Yeah,
Right,
right.
because
So
it's like from the other side, you have to have the faith and trust from that person that, you know, you don't have any negative intentions, right, in any of the behaviors that you might display. And that's the whole problem, because a lot of society is afraid because they'd rather be afraid and assume that you're going to do something bad to them than just
yeah,
be
and they don't
patient
want to
with
be a bad person. So like, I think a lot of people want to think they can be a friend to an autistic person no matter what, because they really need to feel like they're a good person. And I'm like, you just may not be equipped to do this now. Maybe later they can, but also they don't have to, because we're not like a manic pixie autistic person giving them their hero's journey and making them have a redemption arc in their life where once they were blind and now they see. I don't fucking care. like that's fine. So we get used that way still. So I think it's just so important for us to say, this is actually a complex neurological condition that's so fundamental to the brain that it takes somebody really caring about it to understand. And we have to care about it because it's our reality.
It's about humanizing
actually,
autism.
you do have someone who can, in fact, be a very good friend to autistic people who's not autistic and even grew up with autistic siblings. It's still a lot of work on both the parts of that non-autistic person and the autistic person to make that friendship work. It is hard to be friends with us. And I have learned this because of Kyle and my interactions with Kyle, is that there are well, not constant, but there simply are issues of communication and differences that arise that don't arise at all with my friendships with other autistic people. And that's just how it is.
Sometimes,
right? It's not easy
sometimes
to
Kyle,
be a close friend to us. Yeah, go ahead.
I've noticed sometimes Kyle might be upset about something, but he doesn't tell me, and he'll like kind of get more and more upset about it. And I'm like, well, but then he'll also tell me things directly sometimes, and the coordination of it is just off. He just knows that sometimes he needs to say stuff to me, but I'm like, how do I put this? I'm like, okay, well, I can't intuit that. So the timing of when you tell me is always going to be clunky, because when I'm supposed to know is immediately. When I'm supposed to know is right away because it's all this information I can't see and I can't. So it's just always going to be clunky when he tells me, if he tells me later or he tells me immediately, because in a neurotypical world, I shouldn't have to be told that. So it's like you need someone that's okay with that, and a lot of people find that awkward or uncomfortable, or they're worried it's going to start a fight or something. And I'm like, it could be sensitive too. There's no script for a neurotypical person to be like, I'm going to tell you obvious things to me, and when they should tell you the obvious thing that nobody else needs to be told.
Oh, Kyle had
right. So then,
ADHD.
so
Does he not?
He has OCD.
OCD, right?
so so then additionally, there's just an issue of like that thing that non-autistic people have, that ability to pick up social context that we don't have. It doesn't work properly for them anymore when we're nearby and when we're involved.
Yes.
And so that puts them into a similar situation as what we have. And so they don't realize all of a sudden they need some of the supports that we need specifically to interact with us.
Right.
And I guess they call that the double empathy problem.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. So I don't know why a thing is a problem this time, but not that time, and kind of vice versa. And so we have to ask each other a lot, and that's way more work because that conversation just like rarely has to happen. You have misunderstandings with like non-autistic people, I get that, but it's definitely not the same sort of misunderstanding.
Right.
Like,
You cannot be a friend to an autistic person the same way that you're a friend to a non-autistic person.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
just bare bones reality of it. And so people who want to be able to be friends with autistic people, or else they feel like they're a bad person, as if it's a bad, makes you, which people have been told that not having any Black friends makes you a bad person for a few decades, actually. So that's part of why.
Or like
is
if you
actually
don't check
people are
in on
getting
a
trained
friend.
into tokenizing us, right? But like it's just, you need a whole new skill set to have a friendship with an autistic person.
Right. And you getting it isn't because you need to like transcend as a person. I think that's the problem that we have now, is that like the idea becomes, well, what's in it for you to put in this effort? Well, now you're a better person. I'm like, well, I don't really want to be a thing that forces people to do like, you know, self-improvement. That's not it.
It's like how does the world work from Bo Burnham Inside, when he says, you know, like, we're not here to be part of your journey of self-actualization.
Right.
Right? Like autistic people don't exist for you to self-actualize into someone who could be friends with us.
Yes. Yes, that's very not you do it because it has to be done. And if you don't want to do it, you can stop, because there will always be people that want to. And I have to want to, because it's that or talk to myself. I mean, like I really do like people. I'd rather work through this, and it's difficult to do it like too much. Like I think we probably do need to sit and talk to ourselves sometimes, or we were talking in another peer support space, have some sanctuary spaces where we can get recharged, and the problems that we have to deal with are different because they're with other autistic people, or even sometimes with a broader neurodivergent community that isn't getting too out of hand with boundaries. That can be a problem, but overall we need to like know that it is a work that we have as like invisible labor, and the other person will have to take on some of that too to be in a friendship with us. But what I'd like them to do is just want to be our friend because of who we are, like that there's other traits about us that are also just nice. And just because they'd like to be around us, like that's, you know what I mean? Not that they'd walk away from it having gotten a you know, value or something. Like they got like good person tokens afterwards. I don't want that. I just want people that like to be around us because we're us.
Jane,
I think we deserve that.
Do you ever
Right,
sometimes get,
actually.
or do you
Well,
guys get this feeling? I just want to ask quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, you sort of, do you ever suddenly feel, I don't know, grateful towards somebody, you know, for their company that they gave you at one point that you spent together, right? And then you think, I wish I gave them this gift or like this thing, or I said this thing to them back then because the idea only occurred to me now, right? And I don't know, do you ever feel kind of maybe a little bit of guilt maybe that you hadn't done so at the time?
Yes, yes. I also I think like when I want to give people stuff is really uncoordinated. So I will
Mhm.
I will kind of give people things when they don't want to receive it, but they might want it later. So
Yeah.
that's super confusing to me because the way that I operate is like thing has arrived, like because I don't have a lot of context, right? Or whatever context means for us is very different. So we're just
Mhm.
like delightful things. So like one way to calm someone down in the middle of a meltdown with autism is to be like your special interest. We'll be like, oh yay, not like I don't feel like talking about that right now. Like usually we're like zippity doo dah. I'd rather talk about my special interests. And with, there's
Mhm.
some exemptions when we're really in pain and we need to cope. That's understandable. But like a lot of the times that will take care of it for us. But for a neurotypical person, like the mood has to be right. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? Um, and that makes me feel like I'm sometimes like not able to be a good friend or partner because I'm not bringing them the thing when they really would like it and when it would help them the most. So I feel bad that I can't help people when it would help the most. And sometimes I
Mhm.
guess I'm doing that by accident. Like sometimes I'll say something and somebody will remember it forever as the most
Mhm.
helpful thing and I had no idea.
And sometimes because you don't follow the social norms, then you give people help when the social norms would normally not get them the help, but they actually needed it then. Right.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So I
I,
think
wa- I
I think
wanted.
the guilt is like a
Mhm.
thwarted desire to be helpful is what I would say. But go ahead.
Yeah. Just on the topic of like people who don't actually think that I'm like one of the most amazing people they've ever talked to, acting as if they want to be my friend actually infuriates me now
Mm.
that I'm in a healthy, self actualized place because I am one of the coolest people anyone could ever know. And I have a limited amount of time in the day. And if you are pretending to like me, you're depriving somebody awesome who actually likes me from getting time to spend with me. Instead, I'm wasting it on you under
Hmm.
false pretenses. And
Right.
I like that's so aggravating, right?
Hmm.
Just accept that you don't think I'm one of the coolest people ever. Like, well, that's what it is that my boundaries and my self esteem are so high now. If I'm not one of your favorite people on the planet, then I don't want to have a relationship with you because I could spend all my time only talking to people of whom I'm one of their favorite people. Why would I
Yes.
spend time talking to other people that that are less awesome than these people?
Right.
It's
And it
and the idea that people sort of lie and pretend and trick me into wasting my time on them is
Mhm.
horrible. Right, like the place you found me online, I thought these people were my friends, but they don't actually. They weren't treating me in the way that I think a friend should,
Yes.
being enthused to interact with me and seeking me out to interact with and
Hmm.
stuff. They didn't treat
Hmm.
me that way, but that's what I thought friendship was because all I was getting was this sort of fake friendship where they're like, "Yay, Lilith's here," and then
Yeah,
nothing. Yeah, they
exactly.
just
And
liked
the
having me around to
mhm.
feel nice that I was around
It's kind of
Right.
like
for
what I
some
don't like
reason.
about drinking culture in this country, right? Where people, like, you realize after a point that some people want you around because they want a drinking buddy, so that there's people out there at a party rather than simply to spend dedicated time with you. That's where I kind of would get frustrated with the conventional culture. I suppose with a lot of mostly holistic people. But even
Mhm.
then, like yourself, you'd have neurodivergent or autistic people who would be roped in because they would feel that, I guess they felt that their value was not high enough where they could ask somebody or just do their own thing, right? And other people want to spend time with them for that alone.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, and that's what gave me kind of a nice feeling too during this conversation, just the idea of like we can just have this nice like in the moment thing. Like people will sometimes say, "Oh, you're being very zen by accident, Jane." I was like, "I don't know." But we can be in the moment with somebody and just like being in the moment with somebody if that's what we're meeting on, and then maybe it leads to something after this moment, but it doesn't have to lead to anything. Like we have arrived whole. We have all arrived whole in this moment. You are whole. I am whole. We are all whole. Wholeness in humanity is something we don't think about or talk about. Like it's a thing that cults hold over your head that you're not whole or you're sullied or you're unpure or impure in some way. So we're not doing a purity test or preparing each other for a purity test. We're just being like, you have arrived here. I have arrived here. That's like not our lens then to say now we must arrive somewhere better after here. We could just be here as us.
Oh, so I think also
Oh.
in that state, the difference is that our perception of time, I imagine, is different to those
Yes.
people
Right.
as well.
What it is
Yes.
that we have synchronized. We are currently in sync, as in we
Yeah.
are in the same place and doing the same thing together. So we've
Right.
come into sync for a moment,
Right.
and then it's just, for as long as that moment lasts, because the moment stays a moment for more than one,
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, and that might be even like maybe the need of like just a purely ADHD but otherwise holistic person and an autistic person is different in co-working quote unquote spaces, like or parallel play or whatever they want to say. Like maybe it's just really nice for an autistic person to be like, I am here and you are here and you are you and I am me, and how nice. Like what kind of thing are you? Oh, can I observe your thing for this amount of time that we are next to each other? Lovely, I will observe you a bit. And I think that some people really don't like being observed, and then those people shouldn't be friends with autistic people. Like
Sure.
we need to observe each other.
I
And
think there's
then
also like an element of they feel they can't, I don't know, they're conditioned to believe that they can't just simply spend time and be quote unquote bored or just
yeah.
observe, or because they always feel like they have to engage, they always have to do something, right?
Mhm.
They always have to be on the move, the whole arriving thing or whatever.
They'll ask, where is this going?
Right. There
Where
always
is
has
this
to be
going?
a end goal. There has to be
Yeah.
a purpose. And
But see,
Yeah.
that's what I've always wondered. By the fact that we're able to be in the moment, is that simply an intrinsic trait that we have because we're autistic? Because I've always wondered, can autistic people, I suppose, quote unquote, train themselves to be able to slow down and just to simply sink in with time in the moment?
Yes, they can. They can and they like it and they need to do it because they're currently going crazy. They can do it too. It's a little, well, let me start that over. They do a version of it and they're doing as arriving mode is fused in. So it's like more flexible and they'll do a little bit of like building a thing and then they'll want to move around and then they'll want to build, and that's fine. So I think it's like a motivational thing. And I think that motivation of doing this building is starved in them.
I was going to add that I think that there's almost no autistic that cannot stand to be by themselves for at least some period of time, because we've all been forced into that position and we've all had to escape from, the greater sociality. But a huge percentage of people are in such large amounts of continuing emotional distress that they cannot really bear to even be alone for a few moments with their thoughts and their selves. And if you're a person like this, then it makes sense that you can't get along well, or you shouldn't be around autistic people or have autistic friends, because by being aware of them and asking questions about them, it draws their own awareness to themselves, and they're not prepared for that.
Right. Yeah. It feels like a threat too. It's like, why are you asking me these questions that are so probing? And I'm like, I don't know. Why aren't you ready to answer them? Like that's kind of weird. Like these are basic questions about who you are. Why don't you know this immediately? And then they'll say like, oh well, I'm protecting myself. Like, I don't know, when was the last time you answered this? Because these are the sort of questions that change if you aren't paying attention, without you noticing it. So you should
And
check
often
what's
it seems to
going
be
on.
that they have never asked themselves this or answered this.
And then they feel embarrassed, like they did something wrong, like I'm going to tell on them to the like good person police or whatever, or the accomplished person police, whatever that is. And I'm like, no, this is just a good idea.
This is the issue caused by the concept of identity, because instead of knowing who they are, they assign identities to themselves and they identify with the identities. And I think as autistic people, we're simply not capable, because of our grid cell impairment, of doing whatever it is non-autistic people do with identity. And identity takes the place of actually knowing yourself. Like if you have these identities, you don't have to know yourself, because you know what someone with these identities is like. And then that's like the causation of things like empty nest syndrome, where a person has spent their whole life thinking of themselves as a parent, and then they stop having to parent, and then they don't know what they are, who they are anymore. And the same thing, like people when they lose their jobs or retire, a lot of people are like, well, I was this worker my whole life, and now who am I?
And that's what I think. Okay, I just had my theory expand a little bit. I think that's how. So it's a different system of memory. The grid cells are part of memory. Place cells are part of memory. Landmark cells, memory. All these are memory functions as well. They remember where they went and where other people went and what it meant at the time. And they're thinking about their history of going places. So if you say, I'm a mother, that's saying I went to the bedroom, I went to the emergency room, I went to the daycare, I went to the, so.
Right, and those words just don't draw those memories or connections or whatever when I hear them.
Right.
Right, that context, that web of context.
It took me forever to say that I was a professional ballet dancer, even like a ballet dancer proper, because I'm like, well, what are my current skill sets? And then I would think about San Francisco Ballet and what the fuck they can do, and I was like, well, I don't know, man. Like, should I say that?
Right.
But then everybody else like, well, you went to the ballet academy, you went to the conservatory, you graduated from there, you went to this job, you got the dollars from the paycheck. Like, I was like, I guess so, but what am I? What are my skill sets? What are my features? And that hangs me up, but not them.
Right, exactly. Right, like I still don't want to say that I am a feminist, to claim a feminist identity, because I can't explain feminism to you. So like I don't have the feature of being able to explain feminism. So I don't think I should say I'm a feminist. If somebody says that they're a thing, they should be able to explain the thing that they are, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Do you see like the common thread there? Because I'm remembering that story, Lilith. I don't know if I was talking to you about this, about how writing, quote unquote, was like invented in the myth with Thoth and whatever. And
you sent me a link to it. I haven't read it.
The article, yeah, but I guess it's just the idea. It's this interesting idea that in some ways, like writing or labels can have this effect of making one forget. And I like this, the examples that you guys gave. The common thread I see is there's the risk of when you identify with something, when you say that you are this or have done this, it's like the moment you do that, the moment like you can. Often people, I guess, stop there. They choose not to think further or even remember further, than that point.
Yeah.
It's just something that I've noticed. Yeah.
It's like a trophy. That's my concern about it. And this, like, there's a book that affected me that I read like 19 or something that was called Finite and Infinite Games by James P. Carson. It's like philosophy that's pretty much game theory, but it's more like philosophical than mathy. But he's saying that like there's the infinite game where the goal is for everybody to continue to get to play together. And then there's the finite game where everybody just tries to win, and that most of the identities people take are these finite game identities, and that they change depending on which game they're trying to win at. So if someone's saying like, let's say they're running for office and they say, not
Oh,
only am I running for office, I'm also a mother. They're trying to win 2 games simultaneously that in our current
right.
society says you can't win both. So they're trying to
And then,
figure out a way to appeal to both
Mhm.
games.
and then that's another issue with like trying to self-describe myself, because I don't want to say anything that isn't always true of me, right? Like if
Yeah.
I am a thing, then I am always that thing. And so like I'm not a gamer because I don't always play games, right? Like it's
Yes. Right. That makes sense to me. Right. And we're
right. And so like
looking for
so the
rules
first
that
word that always comes to
true.
mind now is that I'm autistic. Like that is my core identity word. Not
Yes.
because and it might be the most important label to put on me if you start to put labels on me. But it's just the one that I know is always true and accurate and useful to highlight. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always
Mm.
autistic. That's just
Mm-hmm.
What I
yeah.
found is that I've never had an identity that I've not ever doubted. Sometimes they would come
Oh,
back and
sorry.
resurface.
Just quickly. Autism isn't an identity. Like I just am autistic. It's not an identity as well.
Mm.
Sorry, go ahead. Right.
But it's just, I suppose maybe then I should have I was using the wrong word, rather what I am, right? Sort of knowing something of myself. It's almost like, huh. I don't know. I thought that I was something at specific points. Later on, then I doubted them, and then I realized, no, actually, I wasn't truly that, because new context, new evidence came in. Then sometimes maybe I would think again that, oh, actually, I am this thing. But then, it's never ever static. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, and it's
And then,
never. Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
well, so another issue that I'm noticing contributes to me specifically, if someone says, "Who are you? What you're about? Tell me about yourself," or whatever. So all I come up usually is just autism and then a blank. But like I am a person with an extremely broad range of being, right? Like I am a very, very different person in different
Mm-hmm.
circumstances and times. And so like I can't if I say like I'm a really energetic person, well that's not true of me all the time. And so I'm going to give you an incorrect model of myself if I say that, right? Sometimes I'm at like a freaking like 10 out of 10 energy. I can be super energetic, but that's
Right.
not
So,
me.
yeah.
There's like
To me,
nothing that I am the majority of the time necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
specifically.
so what I'm seeing is that, you're daring to choose to be the totality of your existence, to put in maybe not the best
Mhm.
terms, but that's sort of one way to describe it. Whereas maybe societally, right, it's often easy to feel like that is not good enough, right? Because it's always about the interests of other people, right? So like you might be feeling more melancholic in the moment.
Oh,
Mhm.
hmm it's sort
And
of
so
like
go
sell
on.
yourself to me. Right.
Yeah.
You're being asked to be a brand, to be a label, to give
What,
yourself
what,
an
what people are
aesthetic.
basically
You,
not saying is really, I don't
right.
really care who you are in your totality, but I need you to be this in this moment, or I'm hoping that you're this in this moment, right?
Yes.
That's
Mhm.
often a common attitude, I feel, but it's not
Mhm.
spoken. It's not, most people don't outwardly state it. Yeah, because I guess it's tied to needs, right? We can't always meet the needs of others exactly as they are in that moment.
Well, I mean, they want us to tell them, okay, are you allowed to be here? Where's your badge? So you're also saying, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
like who let you in
right.
here? And we're like, oh, this guy let me in. And they're like, okay, did they give you a badge? I'm like, yes, here's my badge. And like, okay, you can be here. So it's also like permission to exist in a space. But that's so fucking
Mm.
weird to me because I'm like, well, what do you do in this space? Is it
So,
stupid? Well,
so
then I
that
don't want to be in
to
a
me that comes
stupid.
from a place of like self-centeredness, or maybe even a bit of narcissism, where you can't see past yourself and your own impulse or need in that moment, right? Because somebody can exist in a space who isn't aligned to what you see and how you're feeling in that moment, right?
Oh, well, so our entire like every culture and society on the planet writ large is a hierarchy that heavily polices acceptable like who's acceptable where and what behaviors are acceptable in them, right?
Yeah.
The only places on the planet that aren't that everywhere are like tiny subcultures and stuff.
Right,
So
it's
like
like
it
a
is
story,
absolutely
right?
normal for everyone always to be saying, where do you fit into the hierarchy? And how does that interact with the space I'm seeing you in? And
Yeah.
therefore, do I need to police you to go
Yeah.
back into how you're supposed to fit into?
How
Well,
well am I
it's like what
supposed to
Yeah.
treat you?
what
Yeah.
role are you playing? And so then how am I supposed to in return act towards you, right?
Yeah. Or also even,
That's
can
good.
you give me something? Because if somebody has the position of authority or trophies, then that person knows other people. So it's also kind of this like, are you able to give me something in the future, like a tit for tat, by
Oh,
being nice
right.
to you now?
Right. Like, are you a person who could be valuable for me to exploit or not? Should I
Yes.
even care about knowing who you are or not? Please
Yeah.
give me a summary of whether or not I should try to exploit
Well,
you.
I guess it's a varied thing, right? Because it's kind of like I need to know who's I don't know, a fruit vendor in the city, so I know who to go to get my fruits when I need them, right? That can be like that's a neutral thing, perhaps.
Yeah.
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 Well, and people are socially dependent. I'm not saying this couldn't be like neutral. The current thing we have is like we're really not distributing the resources that we have available in a sane way. So people are
Mhm.
also just trying to figure out like, can you help me navigate this insanity? And some people do it in more pro-social ways where they're, trying to build a collectivist sort of framework inside of a capitalist competitive framework. And even like an atomized framework. So there, I can appreciate like that gets pretty complex, but we don't get to say very directly like we're being abused all the time. Are you going to abuse me, or are you like, do you like abusing people? Are you cool with this? We don't get to
Oh,
say that. I would
so
rather say that.
Jamie just had a great point about like this is one of the big important uses of small talk is that
Hmm.
whatever answer you give and simply the way that you talk and all the social signifiers that come from you engaging in small talk allows non-autistic people or people with like working human social
Yeah.
understandings to place you and know who you are
Yeah.
vaguely, just
Yeah.
very quickly, and thus whether you're a threat or not. It's just a
Hmm.
quick, like, do I need to be scared? And right, if you say, oh yeah, the weather, blah, 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 or whatever, they hear, oh, I don't hear any identifiers of danger. You don't
Hmm.
sound like
Hmm.
the psychopaths or
Yeah.
other dangerous things that I've seen in the past.
Yeah. 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 You're predictable, and this is the problem that I'm having, is that like autism makes us unpredictable. It shouldn't make us this unpredictable, but I think that like people who are intentionally unpredictable to manipulate really like scapegoating us. So they're not going to say like, I'm becoming unpredictable on purpose. And occasionally we
Right.
get accused of being unpredictable on purpose. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
that's people that are manipulating you. I'm not manipulating you. I don't
But
even know how to begin with
Right.
the
that.
crazy thing that I see is that we're not acting unpredictably. We're acting naturally, which is
Yes.
then labeled as unpredictable because the
Oh,
system is made in such a way to create a series of fears that can then be leveraged and manipulated by the
al-
people who know how to control them, right?
also because we are hidden and ostracized and made to mask, people don't get to be exposed to how we are and how we naturally are, and
Hmm.
therefore they don't know how to predict us, and they
Yes.
right like it's a self causing loop issue as
Yeah.
well. That like
Self-reinforcing.
self-reinforcing issue. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
Right. Like because apparently 1 in 44 people is the latest count on how many people are autistic. And so if
hmm
1 in 44 of the people everyone knows 44 people in their lifetime. So like everyone should have known and had a relationship with an autistic person. and know what at least sometimes autistic people are like.
Yeah,
But
and we're losing
it's
that
just
because
hidden.
we're
Yeah.
also getting excluded from places in society right now. So they're not meeting us under conditions where we're doing well.
Yeah.
They're
So
of course. That's not helping
I have
any
a
of them.
theory.
Right.
I have a little bit of a
So
theory
the
on my
times
side.
that they do see us is usually when we're in distress.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like maybe whatever chemistry that we've got going on perhaps predisposes autistic people to be more in tune with maybe even like certain natural rhythms, right? For the human body, but maybe towards the planet and towards nature, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously we're not finding it very easy to live in that state right now, given how things are going, ergo
Exactly.
leading to the alienation and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like again,
Which is
like
by
I'll
design.
say, yes, it's by design. They didn't like us there because we take positions of importance because we're good at what we're doing. If you give us a place where we can work on it. My grandmother was a head nurse at a time when women were discriminated against heavily and was given a ton of authority over how that was run. And my grandfather was a nuclear physicist on the Manhattan Project, and so was another autistic person I randomly found on TikTok. So we used to have positions out of academia or out of extremely trained professions that are respected in society, and now we're being stuck at home.
I just realized, so that's the additional issue, is unlike the sociopaths that get into positions of power and the narcissists, who respectively can be traded with or manipulated by the other people in positions of power, an autistic person in a position of power cannot be manipulated by the sociopaths and narcissists.
We will refuse because they're going to ruin the work.
And they want us gone. Right?
Yes, they do.
Right.
Exactly.
We're going to do things well and properly and for the good of everybody. And they're
Right.
like,
The
no,
way that they would see it.
I need you to scratch my back because this is how things should be done. And it's like, no, your worldview is in direct opposition with my existence. Please leave. And they don't say, please leave. They sneak around and get us removed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. They want their back scratched, and I'm like, but that's not what this space is for. It's not for scratching your back. We have to do this other thing. What are you talking about? Stop asking us to scratch your back.
Gosh, let's just make like a little zoo of capitalist overconsumption and put all the people who are desperate for it in there, and then we'll run the rest of the world well. And with that surplus value that we make by actually running things well, we'll keep them in their luxury. And they could,
Well, that's the funny.
Yes, Mr. Trump. Yes, Elon Musk. You're king of the world. Like it's basically healthcare for narcissists.
They want to put everybody else into that. That's what's so crazy. So they know that they belong. They belong into. Okay, let me put this very carefully. The people that are trying to actually manipulate social reality need to not be put into that position. They need to be detected, and probably for a little while, like somewhat institutionalized, so that people can figure out if we can fix that, because it's just too dangerous. They can't. They can't. They certainly can't be put in positions of power. But to make sure that they never have to feel that threat again, they install themselves into positions of power through their ability to lie. So I think they know that that's a threat.
That I keep coming back to is that like I really am like I'm capable of lying, of course, technically, but I am so resistant to lying. Like if I will almost never go that path unless I am absolutely forced into it by circumstances and people around me.
Yes.
Right. And
it doesn't make sense for us to do that. Like this will never get us any closer to working on what's actually going on, and we have to do that when the social information isn't available. We got to get down to, okay, well, what is my sense data processing saying is here, and is it here?
Right. And it comes to that, like, if other people are pro-social, then I should never lie to them, because lying to them it could only cause bad things to happen. Assuming that assuming they're at least neutral to me and don't want to intentionally cause bad things, and they want to avoid accidentally harming me. So like, why would I ever lie? But then like I've been forced by reality to realize, for some reason, there's a lot of people who, if I say true things, bad outcomes are going to happen. And even in this moment, I do not really understand why that is so prevalent. It doesn't make sense
Well,
Right.
to me
it's
still.
it's
We do
because
that.
some truths are not seen as acceptable in the current society, and
Mhm.
some are.
Oh, and I guess it's
Well,
because all the
yeah.
rules and stuff has been made by narcissistic or sociopathic abusers. And so they take advantage of the typical person who is nice and does want good things for us, but like the systems are set up so that we can't just act naturally and be
Yeah,
nice to each other.
because you see what they do, what they prey on is, I
Mhm.
guess they sort of come in and then they'll say, I'll spin this really cool story for you, this fairy tale, right? I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna give you the chance to play the role of
Oh,
something that's
right.
gonna be much more amazing than anything that you'll ever see. And if
Mhm.
you buy into that, you get subsumed into their reality,
Right.
into their dream. Yeah.
So because these people not only exist but are predominantly in positions of power, we all have to at all times be suspicious of each other, and so other people have to be suspicious of me to remain safe from abusers,
Yeah.
and
Because the
then
future
and then
came from
I
abusers.
have to pretend that I'm not me because abusers will see that I'm a person who doesn't like lying and that I have really strong empathy and they will come straight to me like a magnet.
Right,
Mhm.
because
Right.
like all actors, right? It's like they assume that you're obviously also wearing a mask. Because why wouldn't you be wearing a mask, right? So they'll always wonder, well, you're showing me like a nice demeanor. You want to do like these
Mhm.
seemingly normal things with me, but can I trust you? What if that's just a facade, right? For something that you want to do to me? Like, what's your
Right.
real
Right.
goal?
And they know that there are people out there with facades and with bad goals. Right.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, like some people, like in my book club, right? Like, why is there like this whole obsession by some people to like listen to true crime, right? Look at like statistics of terrible things happening to people like over and over, right? Like some people fantasize about the worst, I guess, scenario happening to them as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And somehow it gives them a sense of control or safety somehow.
That's it. Well, that's exactly it, because they want to be ready, because it might be that they suffer quite badly at a moment when they were quite young, where they weren't ready, and they obviously feel that they don't want to repeat that again.
Mhm. Mhm. That makes sense. There's like a trauma response, I guess.
Mhm. And just like the general state of affairs of the I think someone wrote an article called like Schrodinger's rapist to talk about the way that during the Me Too movement, the way that women have to think about men, the fact that it doesn't matter how rare it is, the fact that you could be, and by just not being cautious enough around you, then something horrible is going to happen. Well, this is
Right.
actually writ large on all people because of the abusers, and capitalism is a cult of abuse. People who wouldn't even be an abuser by natural predisposition are forced into it because it's their only like avenue for trying to get money, right? There are a lot of poor people doing scams on the internet or phone scams or whatever because they have no avenues for making a living, and so we're forced to prey upon each other even. Yeah.
Comes a dog eat dog world, right? That's
Yeah.
basically it.
Yeah.
But I
Which
thought did kind
again,
of
like
go ahead, yeah.
dogs don't eat dogs very often. Like,
Exactly.
how often does a dog eat a dog?
Right.
Well,
That's
see, that's the thing. They usually eat each other when they're like starving close to
starving.
death.
Only when right. So when you say it's a dog eat dog world, you're actually saying that we're all living in starvation and hostility to each other.
Scarcity,
Yes.
yeah. But a thought
Scarcity
it also
mindset.
did cross my
Real scarcity.
my mind, which is like for example, like the fear, right, of like fearing of what might happen as well. Like a part of it too is maybe like a byproduct of almost like, to me, when narcissism, gets it like a bit ingrained within one's worldview, because then it's very easy to see every single, even in a misunderstanding, as a personal attack on you. You know what I mean? Because somebody might have otherwise perhaps positive intentions, they might have mishandled something, but then obviously it may register to you as a very traumatic, experience. And that's, I think that's it's a tragic thing in and of itself, because again, like the numbers, right? There's very few people who mean direct harm to others, and yet the way that the world is causes this chain effect to always kind of rebound of people getting hurt and then feeling more scared and so on and so forth. I've always wondered how to break that. How do you break that chain?
So it's a question we need to start asking a lot right now, because there's a lot of people like that. I don't know how dangerous they can become, because it seems like historically that person can become a tool of very disruptive personalities, and we can't allow that to continue the way that it has been, because right now it's like getting to be very scary. I mean, that's
Right.
that's what we're dealing
But
with.
then the
Because I
paradox is that
realized
if,
so the answer to how to break that chain would be very easy if all of a sudden the intentional bad actors were gone, because then you just have to apply a little bit of kindness, a little bit of love, a little
compassion.
bit of forgiveness and compassion. And that will break the cycle of escalation of violence if there weren't intentional bad actors around.
Right.
But they
So
are
now
around. And so
I see what the answer is in this reality. You know what it is? It's the boat analogy for people who grow up in narcissistic abuse, right? There's the common analogy of you're on a boat with a family, right? And one person is rocking the boat like crazy, screaming, right? And then everybody grows up to like stabilize the boat and do everything to make the person who's rocking the boat really happy, so that they don't cause any more issues, doing everything they want. So the answer is to simply kick the person off of the boat.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Right.
Sure,
Well,
but then
I don't know. I don't know, because then that's murder,
what does
right?
that look like? No, it doesn't. Well, it's what Jane was talking about first institutionalization and then a thing that we would build for these people. It doesn't exist yet. If it already existed, then we wouldn't have the problem.
Right.
I wonder if it's ever existed in history.
Right. And so what has existed is what these people would do, what the narcissist or the sociopath would do, which is lock us in a room and that's about it, right? Like this is what the initial sanatoriums and stuff were based on. Just lock them up and throw away
Lock
the
up
key.
this, and in the narcissistic
Right.
family dynamic, that's lock away the scapegoated child, which is also what happens. Like,
All right, they
scapegoated
literally
child
call
gets
it crazy making behaviors. So they kind of want you to make you as crazy as them in some ways, I suppose.
well, crazy enough to deflect, right? So then they can call you the crazy person, and they can never be put away.
Oh, right. And so when you try to talk about politics in like just a normal, everyday, sane person perspective of like, we want everyone to be happy and healthy and have lots of what they need, then they start saying you're crazy and delusional and that life could
Or
never
you're a
be
communist.
like that. Well, no, so communists, they turn into an insult that means that you're crazy and delusional, or that it means you're a fascist, actually, right? They use communist to signal fascist, basically.
Right. They also use they're a favorite tool of theirs is like conspiracy theories, right? That like, oh, they're not actually like, you don't really mean to help people. What you actually want to do is take power. Yeah.
Because if they want to trick you into believing their projected reality, they need to first make you doubt actual reality. And so conspiracy theories is a great way to get people to doubt reality. And then when they're actually in power, doing actual conspiracies is a great way to get people to believe in conspiracy theories, right?
Yes. Yeah. Gee,
right.
that's scary.
So like if
oh no.
if the CIA actually killed Martin Luther King, or the fact that they could have and we wouldn't know. Like, of course, people have conspiracy theories when we exist in a world where there's no way to know if the rich and powerful are doing conspiracies. And in fact, the United States has a history almost entirely consisting of conspiracies and abusive actions again and again and again and again, right? And the only reason things like the fucking war on drugs or the way they introduced cocaine in all these places or whatever aren't called conspiracy theories is because we have the documentation. If we didn't have that, they'd still just be called conspiracy theories.
Right.
Even though they were very, very real.
They're definitely like also, I guess, what is that, like flooding the zone where like they're also trying to confuse you about what they're really doing that's illegal or like would require conspiratory behaviors like co-conspirators.
And that's why this and that's why the actual conspiracists, which are the cult leaders that we're talking about that are using Trump, actually like the fact that Trump is delusional and insane and stuff, because it causes him to constantly throw out chaff, to throw out misleading nonsense for people to spend their energy trying to prepare against. And it makes it harder to know what their actual goal that they're actually going to be engaging with is going to be. The one good thing that we have on our side is that these people are also terrible at doing conspiracy and constantly say out loud and publicly what their real goals are. Because they could just say, oh, that's not my real goal later. And like the liberal philosophy of being like, oh, okay, taking people at their word and stuff like that. They take advantage of that.
Because they also can't help themselves to brag about how smart they are, right? And how everything.
We have problems with sane washing.
They're recruiting as well. What do you say they have problems with what?
Sane washing. Because if our civilization is actually this vulnerable to narcissistic abuse, that means we have a lot of problems.
Yes. Yeah. And we do have a lot of problems. Everybody knows that we have a lot of problems. But like you're talking about with like your very own parents, Jane, is that it is scary to acknowledge the degree to which we're all in danger and have these problems. And so like subconscious or non-conscious denial is helps you
to give
get
an
through
example.
the day, right? Like how, and in fact, we all are currently trying to navigate the problem that denial saves you from, is how to navigate your day and get your day, like keep money coming in so you have a roof over your head and food in your body and everything when the world is as crazy as it is, when we're in this emergency, right? Like it's like, what do you do?
Right, so that's the thing, the fear that people have, it's like going to the analogy of the boat again, right? It's like people are afraid to say out loud that it's the person who's rocking the boat who's the issue at hand, right? Because they're afraid that if they were to do so, the others would turn on them, right? Because the person would get super loud and then they'll be like, they're causing all the damage. Yeah.
Because in a narcissistic family, it's, hopefully one main person and a few like imitators or whatever that are rocking the boat. But in a society, there are, even if it's like 0.1% of people are these boat rockers who are basically threatening to kill us all if you don't put me in charge and cater to me. There's always more of them around.
Right, but the thing is that they by themselves can rock the boat. It's because everybody else is subtly rocking the boat as well. They're not actually stabilizing truly, right?
I see what you're saying.
So basically that denial is part of the boat rocking that people are conditioned to do to keep these people from rocking the boat more. Right.
They like a little bit of a ocean, drift or something. We're supposed to make them comfortable. We can't not do these things.
Because you condition them to be used to things like hypervigilance to all these different environments, so that then they are dependent on that person who's setting the rules.
Mm. Right. Or they don't know they were doing it, and they're like, what do you mean that we're constantly rocking the boat slightly? Like they have sea legs basically, so they just can't see the ways in which they are reinforcing this false reality.
Yeah. And we never get a break from it, because that's like, well,
And then
that's
maybe
okay.
So, and then maybe
Go ahead.
just finish the example. Perhaps people like
Mhm.
autistic people, or people who see the reality of the system, or the people on the boat who maybe don't have sea legs for whatever reason, right? They aren't as able to do so. So they obviously see
Yeah.
what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, with us as autistics specifically, it seems to be like we're not able to believe in this false reality that everyone else is taking in to some degree.
Well, because it's based on where they went in their memory, right? That I was saying earlier. So they're like, well, this means that I'm a mother, blah blah blah, because I went to the bedroom, I went to the hospital, I went to. So like they're saying I have proven that I deserve this trophy in society, and this is why I need to keep the society, because otherwise my trophies are gone,
Oh, are gone and worthless. And it's like,
including
right.
money.
And we're like, no, it's already not worth, it's already worthless, right? So like
Yes.
even money, right? So money is the medium of exchange for which we purchase the legitimacy of ownership, which is maintained through state violence, right? So money is the thing that lets you say that thing is mine now according to the law, and lets you get the things that you need to survive.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, which one? I can actually explain what money is and how it's used now, which is not a thing I could do even like a couple weeks ago. So like I'm very glad my model of reality is working so well, but I'm so scared and afraid that this is what it required reality to look like for me to actually understand the degree to which everything is this abusive nightmare.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me on to the next question I want to ask actually earlier. I've been thinking about, in the UK here, similar to you guys, right? There's going to be a scheduled reform bill for the disability grants, right? And the entire social care system in a month or so, right? And so, like, obviously, I'm aware that that might change who is eligible to receive some of those things. I certainly feel that I could be one of those people, you know, who might have like that help removed, because they're going after Gen Zs, right? People who like they only, if they even would give anything, it'd be to people who have the most severe physical ailments, right? That's what they would consider to be like worthy of that money. So the question I suppose that I was thinking of today, which is like, suppose that that would happen, right? How, you know, and knowing what we know of society, right, from what we just discussed, like, how do we choose to live, you know?
If that happens, then we need to have a disability rights movement that incorporates neuroscientists and developmental scientists, like not just neurologically, because then those disorders that are like movement disorders that are more subtle, or that like a lot of this actually comes down to the brain. They don't like that there's brain disorders. They want brain disorders to mean that you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that. So they're having a fight because they need to say like, well, if you're not okay with us being sociopaths, then your disability means that you're a problem for me. So like people who are disabled, I think we actually have like an actual, like, let me put this together. I think there's a psychological war between sociopaths and disabled people.
Well, I guess in all minorities, all people who are being abused.
All minorities, but specifically like, okay, so all minorities can be disabled, right? And theoretically, there's minorities that could also be sociopaths. So I'm saying the actual class war is between the people that shouldn't be in society because they're antisocial, and the people that should be in society because they're pro-social but disabled.
Right.
Right. Right. And so like the crazy, they've defined crazy and they've used crazy to say all of the mental, non-literally point-to-able disabilities. Crazy means actually in colloquial use, it means sociopath. It means you are a danger that people have to watch out for. Right.
Yes.
And stupid means narcissist, actually. It means that you can't follow basic logic, right? Because even like a person who is mentally retarded, they're not stupid, they're retarded. Like their brain growth stopped at a certain point, basically. They have a limit, but it's functional up to that limit. So like they still, whatever amount of reality that they do understand it. They're not delusional, right? But
I mean, I feel like all those words are still code for them saying, I don't want to pay you to not be a wage slave for me.
Here's what I think is interesting about, I'm going to call them sociopaths or psychopaths. Like I don't know what terms we need for this, but you could also say like maybe malignant personalities or whatever, malignant brains. There's something in their brain that's doing
malignant
this.
actors, because
Malignant
they're
actors,
talking about how they act within society.
They want to manipulate able-bodied, able-minded people.
Mhm.
Because
and
that's
actually,
who
you're
they've
right.
been practicing on.
They've Darvoed us, Jane. That's what so they've Darvoed the people with disabilities, and they've set it up so that CEO is the name of the special privileged position for sociopaths, where they get the things that people with disabilities need, aka an extra share of the profits of the able-bodied, able-minded people, so that they don't have to do the same share of work as others, which is what disabled people need. But instead, they're giving it to these abusers instead of the people who need it. And they've convinced everybody that this is the morally correct way to run a society through brainwashing, I guess.
It's leveraging envy, right? Because I think it's you could be like me. You could go, you could get to my position of being a CEO and have all this money, right?
Oh, right. So it's actually, again, it's like you're making people unsafe on purpose, because the reason somebody who's not a sociopath wants to be rich is because money's the only thing that can purchase you safety or relative safety in our society, right? And so the societal reforms that people talk about, like universal basic income, they have to oppose, because if there was a universal basic income, that would mean everybody is safe by default.
Yeah.
And then how would they control behavior? If everybody had
if
food
everyone's safe
and a
by
house,
default, their
then
desire
how
to
would they
make
control
people
you and take your profit, take the value of your labor, if they can't force you into doing labor in bad conditions, because you'll die if you don't.
Right. Okay, so if other people are, let me also just argue this. If other people are default safe, the person that is predatory is going to stand out a lot more.
Right. Because no one else is, and also like no one who's not innately predatory is going to be acting predatorily if everyone is safe and has what they need.
Yeah.
Right. So there'd be so many less of them, and so they'd be unsafe in their predation.
Yes.
So safe to me is also saying that it's not being whole. If you don't feel whole, you're not going to be swayed by people promising to give you something that you don't have, that you aren't, right?
Talk a little bit more about that. I want to hear that argument.
I'm just thinking, right? This idea of safety, right, is wholeness, right? When people feel whole within themselves, then somebody who's having these malignant intentions, when they come in and be like, "I'll sell you this,"
I might argue about that a little bit. I don't think if you have a vulnerability, it's a problem unless somebody says you need to do this specific task that conflicts with your vulnerability. So it's like, like we do have demands that we can sometimes not meet. And I think we could interpret not being whole as that, like not having enough. I'm not good enough. I say that a lot when I have meltdowns. So like, but
Sure.
then why should I be doing something that I have a deficit in the first place? Like, what's the
So let
fucking
me
point?
say a thing that might be a reframing or might just be a new point. But like, if everyone in society has the basic things that they need for survival, and if feels like okay with themselves and doesn't hate themselves for some reason or otherwise is unfulfilled, then there's no purchase for cults or narcissists or sociopaths to leverage on people, right?
Mhm.
Like if we were in a utopia, then narcissists and cults and sociopaths wouldn't be able to exist,
Right. Well, and I see
right? So
that's
like,
why the wholeness thing, I hear the threat. If somebody says you're not whole, or that's somebody saying you're not whole, therefore I can threaten you with this, or I'm going to remind you because you aren't like this. What if this happens? So I think it's like going into a cause and effect manipulation of like, here's some things about you. What if I threatened you with the things that you can't do anything about?
Oh, and that's, why these people, bring up violence, and it's just all the things that are threats all the time. They over-report violence, they over-focus on, extreme edge cases and all these things.
Well, it's about
Right.
fear. It's about leveraging fear, right?
It's about fear because, because their threats are a lot more effective when you have fear, right? And the way that we just like listened to how Hitler went about his things, he used threats to manipulate people.
Right. And the problem with the narcissistic or whatever pathological narcissism maybe is, whether I don't know, but whatever this is, the thing is like this is what I think they do all the time. Like, and I don't think they want to do anything else. Like they spend all of their cognitive energy learning information about how they can threaten people and then threatening them. There's like nothing else going on.
Because if because we're thinking about Elon Musk as a child and just how if he was in a perfect utopia place, he still wouldn't be able to fit in and be happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like he needs to be able to leverage threat to make people do things the way he wants. Like that is how he feels safe, is to have control over the situation.
Yeah, because I don't think they know what the fuck
like
is actually going on.
So if you're it's they have their own mapping blindness. If they cannot feel empathy to others, then they can't understand the safety that other people having empathy gives to them. Right?
Correct.
They are completely blind to the fact that other people won't just kill them at any given moment because they felt like it for a second.
Correct.
Because
That's
to
what
a
they feel
person
like.
with empathy, that is horrific and will haunt you for the rest of your life, right? Like that's what a huge chunk of our media is about ever killing another person ever under any circumstances. Even if you had no other choice and it was for a great reason, it will still haunt you forever, right?
Yeah.
But they don't believe that. They're like, well, that can't be true because that doesn't make sense in my brain.
Yeah, because they kill animals and stuff and torture animals, and that's why it's really disturbing that Barron Trump has been reportedly someone who tortures and kills animals.
And then, like, it's very disturbing to us because we have empathy. But like, if you didn't have empathy, there wouldn't be anything disturbing about it.
It would be like for them, it's like
it'd be like taking apart a radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's like I'm curious about what this animal looks like or on the inside or how it will act if I do this or that. And in fact, non-sociopathic people as children go through a phase where they would do the same kind of thing, where they don't have empathy towards other animals or whatever. And their caretakers just like make sure they don't accidentally torture an animal until their brain grows. But for sociopaths, their brain doesn't grow that part.
Right, and we need to know more about why, because it's critical
Mhm.
at this point. And I think the reason we're not asking why is like they're literally defunding science right now.
Yes.
Like
Oh, yeah.
it's gonna come for them. It's science will eventually come for the pathological abusers. It's going to come for them, and I don't know how well they understand. They must understand that that's a threat. So they go to religions instead.
Oh,
Anything that can give them control.
I
well,
think it'll
because
be
our
coming
stories of
to.
monsters are about them. When we talk about like vampires or just like any of these sort of like monsters, like these myths are about
Dragons.
them. And right, and so like the weakness of a vampire is like it's so scary and dangerous until you know what it is, and then it's completely easy to take care of. Like, oh, I just
Right.
go out in the
It's
sunlight and it can never hurt me
yeah.
again. So like if we understand what these sociopathic people are and what they're doing, all of a sudden they won't be able to prey on us anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They're oh, and I actually see why this would be evolutionary, why this would happen evolutionarily, right? It's sort of, it's not quite a parasite, and I don't want to dehumanize them because they do have empathy, but like it is effectively a predatory species or variant of human within
Yeah.
the human genome that gets to
Yes.
exist and prey upon us
Yes.
as we exist,
Yep.
right?
That's
So like
that's the sag of our
of course that
species. Yep.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I don't know what we're gonna do about it, but like we're way behind this
Yeah.
reckoning.
Yeah,
But there are
we don't know
psychologists
the
that talk about it.
specifics, but we do know the general thing of what we do about it, which is like science will let us identify who these people are, and then we will
Yep.
do some extremely humane thing
Yes.
that will keep them from hurting others.
Yes.
Well, I guess
That's it. That's
maybe the idea was because I was reflecting a few weeks back on vampire stories, right? Various that I've read, and like the idea of
Mhm.
can one be, I don't know, if you became one, right? Can you sort of rehabilitate yourself? Can you live in such a way to stave off
Mhm.
the hunger, right? That kind of comes with
Right.
that one's predatory nature. And maybe in the future, in a better world, perhaps there would be controlled outlets that would be widely known.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, actually, right. This actually is a great point. This made me realize a great point that we've been talking as if all sociopaths are abusers, and they're not. There are, in fact, huge amounts of people who are sociopaths, and they get along just fine in society without doing anything immoral ever in their whole life. Um,
That's true.
right.
Yeah.
So like what do we do with sociopaths? I'm pretty sure it's the same as any other disability, where as long as we can identify it, we'll probably be able to give these people the tools they need to live a normal life.
Right.
Oh,
And they
and
may
that
need
makes
to do different things in society. Like maybe they
that
would make a good
also.
surgeon.
I was about to say that made me think of like an earlier point that came up in my mind. It's like uh, there needs to be work done in restructuring I guess the mental health services and the approach towards diagnosis, because isn't that some conditions, like for example, narcissistic personality disorder, right? A lot of people will not be incentivized to go and if they suspect they have that diagnosis, but maybe they think that they want to live in a healthy way in society. Well, they don't have many incentives to go and get that diagnosis, be open about it, because people will
Oh,
avoid them with a 10-mile pole, right?
right. And if like an even worse case for this is like if you are a teenage male and you suspect that you're attracted to children sexually, like what are you supposed to do? There is no path for someone who suspects they're going to develop into a pedophile to get help in any way.
Yeah. Well, and we may
Yeah.
this is like these are the difficult questions that we're not
Well,
getting to
no,
answer.
so they're not difficult questions. They're only difficult questions because we've allowed these toxic sociopath people to take the reins of our entire society. Right? These would be easy questions if we didn't have to be afraid of being rounded up and put in concentration camps and murdered. Right? People
Right.
could
Okay,
just
fair, yeah.
actually go to a therapist and say, I suspect this, and get me help. And,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't have to worry about like extreme stigmatization.
Right. I see. Yeah. That we could actually
Right.
treat
And
it. Yeah.
right. It's not a hard question. It's actually a very simple question. Like, boom.
Mhm.
But
And yeah,
it's hard to face for the reality of the implications that it brings. Yeah.
it's hard to
We can't.
face in the position of the world that we're in now, where we're being controlled by this extreme minority of antisocial people. Oh,
Mhm.
that's just the word, Jane. Just say antisocial. That's
Yeah.
what we call them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to use the word productive, but I don't know what we produced. But this has been an extremely good talk so far, or
Good.
right?
I'm
And it's
glad.
been about 2 hours. I don't know.
Let me check where I'm at with this. I'm kind of maybe I can finish. I'm putting together a bookcase, and like I think I need to throw away some books, but for now I'm temporarily just putting everything up on the bookcase,
Sure.
so I'm almost done.
So, and also what I'm going to suggest might be a good idea is, we finish the stream. That doesn't mean that those in the call doing HCAT need to stop HCATing or that we need to break up immediately. But
We could do
like, I
that.
think this has been a successful stream as of this moment, and that it's
Yeah.
been a good like wrapping up point in the conversation. If you agree, then maybe we can do that.
We can do that. Let's try that. Let me. Okay, I'm upstairs, so I have to go downstairs and get the thing set
Yeah.
up. Is there any other closing thoughts I have? Let's see. Well, I'll just.
Yeah.
We'll just.
Oh, I wish
Yeah.
everybody in Twitch or whichever, all the other places, a nice week ahead.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we should do that more often. That will have like nice things happen, and I hope everyone gets to spend time with like the things that they find rich in meaning, because we need to contribute a lot of meaning back into the world right now.
Yeah.
We're being told that things that don't matter matter, and things that do matter don't. We're very much in opposite land right now. So it would be good for people to know that like whatever they discover during their week is actually a big deal. Like go discover and spend time with those things.
I think a good
And
idea is that when you're struggling to find strength or hope or faith even, right, in a way forward sometimes, like I do often, I guess the only thing you can do is just look inward. And that's it.
And yeah, my closing thought would be that like I think we all started off this stream thinking that it was going to be a hard topic that was going to make us feel bad, and it didn't. Acknowledging reality and learning about it didn't make us feel worse. We feel
right.
better because at least we understand what the fuck's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we can then meet it on our own terms, right? More so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, let me run downstairs and I'll clear out the stream for today. Boop boop boop. Thanks everyone.
Oh, thank you for the kind words, everyone in chat. They also said a bunch of wonderful, kind things. Jamie says,
yeah,
please remember
sure.
we love you all. You all matter. Take care of yourselves. You deserve to be happy. The world is
Yes.
tough enough for us all, and we're here together. That is so true, Jamie. And I just want to let you know specifically that I really value what you bring to this community. And I really value that you show up as often as you do in chat. I think you're a specifically positive contribution to the work we do here. And I know you've felt otherwise in the past, but
Thank you
that's
for
not true.
saying that. Yeah, exactly. And we're all growing in important ways while we're here too. And that it's different what we all are gonna get out of it. But that's what a peer support space is for. And especially when I think it should be motivation based, like what we're doing. And that motivation is like, a thing that we all benefit from seeing happen in so many different ways.
Wait, hold on. Give me 15 seconds. I want to pull a quote that I think everybody's gonna really like. Right?
You have the
Great.
Oh, I should have counted out exactly 15 seconds. That would have been slightly funny. No, I just realized that it might feel slightly awkward if we just
It was 15
silence for
seconds in
15
mine
seconds.
world. All good.
Yeah.
But there's
I just figured I'd make some noise. Yeah, go
it was the ending chapter of a manga that I read like years ago that never got finished, right? But I kind of put the words up on my wall, right? I printed out the panels. And it said, now, even if we're only doing small things, experiences, passion, lies, now the world is about to change. My story of growth is still coming.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
I love
I always
that.
say that to myself when times are tough, I guess, to just remind myself that, yeah, my story of growth is, and so is yours, still coming.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We should keep ending on positive notes. This is good. Okay. All right. Okay. Goodbye, everyone on the stream.